You've been told to fight your anger, to hide your sadness, to run from your fears. But tell me, has that ever truly worked? The more you push away your pain, the stronger it seems to come back. The more you pretend to be fine, the heavier the mask feels on your face. And deep down, you know this weight is exhausting. But here's the truth, they never told you. Negative energy isn't something you have to fight. It isn't an enemy. It's something you can understand, transform, and finally release. And the teachings of the Buddha hold the key. For centuries, monks, sages, and seekers have used these teachings not just to survive their suffering, but to turn it into peace, clarity, and freedom. Imagine your mind like a lake. Right now it feels stormy waves of anger, ripples of fear, clouds of regret. But tonight, as you listen, those waters will begin to calm. The noise will fade. The stillness you've been searching for will rise naturally from within you. This isn't about pretending bad things don't exist. It's about learning the art of letting go, the wisdom of not clinging, the power of seeing your emotions for what they really are. Temporary visitors, not permanent chains. So tonight, as you drift into sleep, prepare for a quiet transformation. Your heart will soften, your breath will deepen, and that heavy energy you've carried for far too long will begin to dissolve, like mist under the morning Sunday. This isn't just another bedtime story. This is a journey into freedom. Are you ready? Let's begin. You've taken your first step into this journey. You've opened your heart to the possibility that all the heaviness you carry, anger, grief, doubt, does not have to define you. That in itself is a crack of light in the wall you've been trapped behind. Now, we move deeper. And here lies one of the most powerful truths in all of Buddhist wisdom. Everything you feel, no matter how heavy, no matter how sharp, is not solid. It has no permanent core. The fear, the shame, the resentment, they feel like iron chains, but when you truly look at them, they dissolve like smoke. This is the teaching of emptiness. And once you understand it, you begin to see your pain not as a prison, but as something you can finally walk through. What does it mean to say emotions are empty? It doesn't mean they are useless, nor does it mean you should ignore them. It means that they are not fixed, not unchangeable, not permanent. They arise, they burn bright for a moment, and they fade. Even the deepest wound in your heart has shifted, softened, or transformed over time. Think back to a heartbreak you thought would destroy you. In that moment, the grief seemed endless. But today, that storm is not the same. Maybe it has softened into a lesson. Maybe it has become a scar you can touch without pain. That is emptiness. The truth that emotions only exist because of conditions, because of thoughts, memories, hormones, words spoken, or silence received. When the conditions change, the emotion shifts. Without the conditions, the emotion cannot survive. Negative energy feels unbearable because we believe it is who we are. You say, "I am angry," and suddenly anger becomes your identity. You say, "I am worthless," and that thought becomes a cage around your soul. But the teaching of emptiness gently shows you the truth. Anger is not you. Sadness is not you. Anxiety is not you. These are passing visitors that arise in your house of consciousness, and when the conditions that feed them disappear, they too leave. The more you cling to them, the longer they linger. The more you recognize their empty nature, the quicker they fade. Think of fire. A flame burns only when there is fuel, oxygen, and heat. Remove one of these, and the flame dies instantly. Your emotions are like this. Anger burns only when it has the fuel of stories, the oxygen of memory, the heat of attention. When you stop feeding the flame, it cannot last. You don't need to smash it out with force. You simply need to see it for what it is, dependent, fleeting, not solid. That vision alone weakens its grip. And yet, when negative energy comes, your body tightens, your breath shortens, your mind begins its storm. You may think, "This is who I am, I will always be this way." But let yourself look deeper. In the middle of sorrow, there is a quiet awareness that notices the sorrow. That awareness is untouched. It is like the clear sky that remains, no matter how many clouds drift across it. The clouds of anger, jealousy, and despair may appear, but the sky itself never changes. This awareness is your true nature, and it is never broken. The Buddha's teaching of emptiness points you back to this. Consider this: if anger truly had a permanent self, it would never end. Once you felt it, you would be trapped in it forever. But you've seen it rise and fall countless times. It might return, but always in a different shape, never quite the same as before. That is proof of its emptiness. Sadness too shifts, sometimes deep and heavy, other times light like a drizzle. It cannot hold a fixed identity. Knowing this, you begin to loosen your grip. You stop saying, "This is me," and instead say, "This is here," a subtle shift, but one that opens a door to freedom. Emptiness does not mean absence. It means freedom from solidity. A glass is empty not because nothing exists inside, but because it can hold water, tea, or wine. Your emotions are the same. Because they are empty, they can transform. Anger can become clarity, fear can become caution that protects you, sorrow can become depth that teaches compassion. The emptiness of emotions is the very reason transformation is possible. If emotions were fixed, you would be trapped forever. But because they are empty, they can move, they can evolve, and you can let them go. This insight is not just for monks or philosophers. It is practical medicine for your daily life. The next time anger rises, do not call it yours. Watch it. Feel its shape. Notice how it shifts when you breathe, how it softens when you stop feeding it with old stories. The moment you see its impermanence, you are already freer than before. The same is true for fear. Fear feels like a solid wall in front of you. But look closer, and you realize it is made of mist. One breath, one step forward, and it begins to thin. You might ask, if emotions are empty, why do they hurt so much? Because emptiness doesn't mean they lack impact. It means they lack solidity. A dream can make you cry, though you wake and see it was only a dream. Emotions are dreams of the mind. They feel real, they move the heart. But when you awaken to their empty nature, their power weakens. You can still feel them, but you are no longer ruled by them. Negative energy feeds on ignorance. The ignorance that says, "This is permanent, this is who I am." The Buddha's wisdom slices through this ignorance. It whispers, "Look again. This feeling is not forever. This feeling is not you." Slowly, that whisper becomes truth you can feel in your bones. You stop drowning in sorrow and begin floating above it. You stop being crushed by anger and begin to hold it lightly in your hands, knowing it will pass. Think of waves on the ocean. They rise and crash with great force, but the ocean itself is vast and steady beneath them. Your mind is that ocean. Your emotions are only waves. Sometimes high, sometimes calm, but never permanent. And no matter how high they rise, they always fall back. The practice of emptiness is the remembering that you are not the wave, you are the ocean that holds it all. This understanding does not come all at once. It grows slowly, each time you see an emotion arise and fade. Each time you remind yourself, "This is not who I am, this is simply passing." With practice, even the heaviest energy begins to feel lighter. And here is the most liberating part. When you see the emptiness of emotions, you stop fighting them. You no longer need to push them away, hide them, or fear them. You let them arise, let them play out, and let them go, just like watching clouds drift across the sky. In this way, emptiness is not cold or detached. It is compassionate. It allows you to hold your pain gently, without being consumed by it. It allows you to see that others, too, are bound by fleeting storms of emotion. And in that recognition, compassion blossoms. You realize that just as your anger is empty, so is theirs. Just as your sorrow is not permanent, neither is theirs. And suddenly, instead of isolation, there is connection. This is the quiet miracle of emptiness. By seeing the insubstantial nature of negative energy, you free yourself from its chains. You stop clinging to what hurts. You stop building an identity around what passes. You return, again and again, to the clear sky of awareness that is never broken. And as you let this truth settle into your heart tonight, feel the weight loosening, feel the chains falling, feel the breath deepening. You are not your anger. You are not your fear. You are not your sorrow. These are only waves, only passing smoke. Beneath them, your mind is vast, steady, luminous. And when you know this, truly know it, the negative energy that once controlled you loses its power. Rest now in that truth. Let the emptiness of emotions cradle you into stillness. And as you drift deeper, know this: the storm cannot last, the waves cannot hold, the sky is always waiting. And in that sky, you are already free. You've seen how emotions dissolve when you look closely, how they have no lasting core, how they vanish when you stop calling them yours. Yet, even knowing this, the waves of anger or sorrow can still feel overwhelming in daily life. The heart understands emptiness, but the mind still struggles to hold it. This is where Zen steps in with a teaching that cuts through confusion with striking clarity. The mind is like a mirror. Whatever passes before it is reflected perfectly, but nothing sticks. The mirror shows the fire, but it is not burned. It shows the storm, but it does not get wet. To live with such a mind is to move through life without being stained by negativity, even when it appears again and again. The metaphor of the mirror is not about cold detachment. It is about clarity and freedom. Think of how a mirror receives light, faces, shadows, and yet the moment they pass, the mirror remains untouched. The reflection does not leave a mark. This is the true power of awareness. Your mind, in its deepest nature, has the same quality. It reflects what arises: joy, sorrow, anger, fear. But at its core, it is never damaged by them. What causes suffering is not the reflection itself, but the way you chase it, cling to it, or fight against it. When anger appears, the ordinary mind reacts instantly. It identifies with the anger, sharpens it with memory, and fuels it with stories until it consumes the whole being. But in the mirror-like mind, anger is just seen. It arises, it is reflected clearly, and it passes without leaving residue. The difference lies in whether you become the reflection or allow it to come and go. This is not about denial. The reflection is still there, fully acknowledged, but without ownership. Just as the mirror does not say, "I am the fire," you too can stop saying, "I am the anger." This way of seeing does not suppress emotion. Suppression is like covering the mirror with a cloth, so you don't see the reflection. But the reflection is still there, hidden yet active. True reflection is open, fearless, unafraid to show what is present. When sorrow comes, the mirror shows sorrow. When joy comes, the mirror shows joy. When bitterness comes, it too is reflected. Nothing is rejected, nothing is clung to. And in that openness, each reflection loses its power to bind. Zen masters often spoke of the mirror to describe the nature of mind. Huineng, the sixth patriarch of Chan, warned against polishing the mirror endlessly, thinking one day it will become pure. He pointed out that the mirror is already pure. What needs polishing is not the mirror itself, but the delusions that prevent us from seeing its clarity. This means that your awareness, right now, already has the capacity to reflect without clinging. The practice is simply to remember it. The more you learn to live with this mirror-like awareness, the less negativity can control you. Consider sorrow. In ordinary experience, sorrow lingers because you keep replaying the causes, reliving the wounds. The reflection of sorrow stays long after the original event has passed because the mind grasps it. But in the mirror-like state, sorrow is just acknowledged as sorrow. No story, no judgment, no replay. It comes, it is known, it fades. Without fuel, it cannot remain. This teaching is not abstract philosophy. It can be practiced here and now. The next time a wave of irritation rises, notice the instant it appears. Instead of naming it my anger, let it be reflected as just anger, appearing in the space of awareness. Watch how it moves in the body, the heat, the tension, the pulse, and let it be mirrored. No pushing it away, no grasping. Stay still, and the anger will move on. The mirror remains. Zen practice often points to simplicity. The mirror is not decorated, not distorted, not painted with preferences. It just shows what island. This simplicity is liberation. To see clearly without clinging is to break the chain of cause and effect that turns a small irritation into a heavy burden. Without this clarity, a single word from someone can echo in your mind for hours. With the mirror-like mind, the word arises, is reflected, and dissolves instantly. There is also a profound humility in this way of seeing. The mirror does not claim ownership of what it reflects. It does not say, "This beautiful face is mine," or "This ugly shadow belongs to me." It shows, and it lets go. To live like this is to stop clinging to praise and blame, success and failure, joy and sorrow. These are all reflections. They appear, they disappear, but they are never yours to hold. Negativity loses its grip because you no longer identify with what passes across the surface. At the same time, the mirror reflects everything equally. It does not favor one face over another, one scene over another. In the same way, awareness does not discriminate. Anger and joy are both seen. Fear and peace are both reflected. This equality cuts through judgment, which is often the root of suffering. You say, "I should not feel this," and instantly the reflection becomes heavier. But the mirror mind does not judge. It shows what is present without resistance. This lack of resistance is the key to freedom. The more you practice this, the more subtle its effects. A moment of jealousy may still arise, but instead of spiraling into comparison, it appears as just a flash of thought. A pang of regret may still come, but without stories, it fades in seconds. Over time, you begin to notice that negativity itself loses its solidity. Reflections cannot bind you when you see them as reflections. This is why Zen teachers often said, "Let thoughts come and go, just don't serve them tea." You do not need to fight the reflections, nor invite them to stay. Let them appear in the mirror of mind, and let them fade. This simple practice becomes a shield against negativity without hardening the heart. You remain open, clear, present. Awareness as a mirror also reveals something deeper. The reflection never alters the mirror itself. The most violent image does not crack it. The most radiant image does not improve it. The mirror remains untouched. Your mind, in its deepest nature, is the same. Beneath all reflections, there is a clarity that negativity cannot harm. When you rest in that clarity, you discover a freedom that does not depend on the presence or absence of emotions. Daily practice makes this truth alive. Whether through sitting meditation, mindful breathing, or simply pausing in the middle of conflict, you can return to the mirror. Each time you reflect without clinging, you strengthen the habit of freedom. Over time, this becomes natural. Life still brings waves of experience, but you no longer drown. You stand in clarity, letting everything pass through, This clarity is not cold indifference. It is full presence. The mirror does not reject the reflection. It shows it fully, with precision. In the same way, awareness that reflects without clinging allows you to meet anger, sorrow, and pain completely without being consumed. This is true compassion. To see clearly without judgment is to open the door to understanding, both for yourself and for others. The more deeply this understanding settles, the more you notice its effects beyond personal emotions. Relationships change because you no longer react blindly to others' negativity. Their anger may appear, but you reflect it without being hooked. Their sorrow may spill out, but you do not drown with them. Instead, you remain steady, present, and able to respond wisely. Negativity thrives on reactivity. The mirror mind starves it by refusing to grasp. Each reflection passes, leaving no trace. Over time, the mind grows lighter, freer, less entangled in the web of reaction. You no longer carry yesterday's anger into today's conversations. You no longer let sorrow from years ago poison the present moment. Life becomes fresh again because you are meeting each reflection as it is, without dragging the past along. This way of living does not eliminate emotion. The reflections will always appear, but it removes the suffering that comes from clinging to them, and that is the heart of freedom. Not the absence of feeling, but the presence of clarity. To live with a mind like a mirror is to walk through the world unstained, reflecting fully, releasing instantly. And as this truth deepens, you begin to sense something even more profound. The mirror not only reflects, it reveals. By reflecting without clinging, you begin to see the patterns beneath the emotions. You see how anger arises from wounded pride, how sorrow flows from unmet expectations, how fear grows from attachment. The mirror shows not only the surface, but the roots, and with roots exposed, healing becomes possible. So tonight, as you rest in these words, let your mind soften into that mirror-like state. Let whatever arises be reflected, fully seen, fully allowed, and then let it go. Do not grasp, do not resist. Trust the clarity beneath the reflections. In that clarity, you are untouched. In that clarity, negativity cannot bind you. And in that clarity, freedom is already here. You have seen how the mirror of the mind reflects anger and sorrow without becoming stained. That clarity brings freedom, yet the path of release does not end with stillness alone. There are practices that move energy directly, transforming heaviness into calm, agitation into flow, despair into subtle strength. One of the least understood, yet profoundly powerful, is the practice of mudras, sacred hand gestures found in the depths of Buddhist ritual. They are more than symbolic signs. They are living channels of energy that reshape the way emotions move through the body, dissolving negativity at its roots. The human body is not only physical flesh and bones, it is a network of channels where breath, thought, and subtle energy are woven together. Every movement you make carries intention, and intention itself leaves an imprint on how you feel. Your hands, in particular, are extensions of the heart and mind. They carry nerves, pathways, and energy centers that connect to deeper layers of your being. When you fold, press, or shape them in certain ways, something within shifts. This is the alchemy of mudra, using the simplest of actions, positioning the fingers and palms to unlock states of peace and clarity that words alone cannot reach. Most people dismiss mudras as mere cultural ornaments, decorative positions in statues of the Buddha or monks in meditation. Yet each gesture carries centuries of refinement, designed through practice and experience. A mudra is not an empty symbol. It is a key. The key opens a subtle door between mind and body, teaching you how to guide energy rather than letting it scatter. And when energy is guided, negativity loses the power to dominate. Take, for example, the dhyana mudra, the gesture of meditation. Both hands rest in the lap, right over left, thumbs lightly touching. At first glance, it seems simple, almost ordinary. Yet the position creates a circle of energy, closing the loop between left and right, balancing the body's polarity. When you hold it, the breath naturally deepens, the mind settles, and agitation has less room to grow. The circle formed by the thumbs becomes a reminder of wholeness, the space where nothing is missing. In moments of anxiety, this mudra grounds the restless current, redirecting it into stillness. There is also the abhaya mudra, the gesture of fearlessness, one hand raised at shoulder level, palm facing outward. The posture speaks without words. There is no danger here, nothing to fear. It is said the Buddha himself used this mudra to calm others in moments of terror. When you raise your hand in this way, the body remembers strength, and fear softens. The palm facing outward signals a release, as though pushing away harmful energy. It does not fight fear aggressively, but transforms it into calm assurance. In practice, this mudra teaches the nervous system to shift from threat to safety, from contraction to openness. Another gesture, the Varada mudra, speaks of generosity and release. The palm is extended downward, fingers open. It expresses the willingness to give, to let go, to release clinging. For dissolving negativity, this mudra is powerful because so much suffering comes from holding tightly, holding grudges, holding regrets, holding fear of loss. The open hand, extended downward, trains the body to feel the energy of release, and release is freedom. There is also the Bhumi Sparsha mudra, the earth-touching gesture, where the right hand extends down with fingers touching the ground. This is the mudra the Buddha used under the Bodhi tree when Mara, the embodiment of illusion and negativity, came to challenge him. By touching the earth, the Buddha called it as witness, anchoring his resolve in something greater than personal struggle. Practicing this mudra brings a sense of grounding, reminding you that no storm of negativity can uproot the vastness of the earth beneath your feet. It dissolves fear by connecting you to stability that does not waver. Mudras do not work by magic. Their power lies in the subtle alignment of body, mind, and energy. When you assume a gesture, you are training attention. The hand posture becomes a physical mantra, repeating silently, "Be calm, let go, release fear, stay grounded." Over time, the nervous system learns to associate the gesture with the state it calls forth. Just as certain songs can evoke deep emotions instantly, certain mudras become anchors for peace, clarity, and freedom. But mudra practice goes even deeper than association. It touches the reality that energy flows through the body like currents through rivers. In yogic and Buddhist traditions, these currents are called nadis, or channels. The fingers are endings of these channels, each connected to different qualities of energy. By pressing them together or shaping them in certain ways, you redirect the flow. A blocked current of anger can be softened into openness. A restless current of anxiety can be guided into balance. This is why monks hold mudras for long periods during meditation, not for display, but because the gesture itself helps purify and stabilize the mind. Negative energy often takes root in the body before it explodes in the mind. The clenched fist of anger, the trembling hand of fear, the restless tapping of anxiety, these are already mudras, but unconscious ones. They reinforce negativity by locking the body into its pattern. Conscious mudra practice reverses this. Instead of the hand acting out tension, it becomes a deliberate tool for release. The same hands that clench in rage can open in generosity. The same fingers that tremble in fear can rest in the circle of meditation. By shifting the body, you shift the mind. There is a hidden wisdom here. The body does not lie. You can tell yourself you are calm, but if your hands are restless, your nervous system knows otherwise. By starting with the hands, mudras bypass the endless loops of thought and touch the core directly. The gesture itself becomes the teacher, showing the mind how to settle without needing words or logic. This is why mudra practice can feel so transformative. It speaks the language of the body, and the body carries the mind along. For those who carry heavy negativity, mudras offer a practice that is both subtle and powerful. When anger rises, instead of shouting or suppressing, place your hands in dhyana mudra. Let them rest, let the circle close, and feel the fire calm. When fear grips the chest, raise the palm in abhaya mudra. Let the body declare safety, and let the heart follow. When sorrow lingers, touch the earth with bhumisparsha mudra, grounding yourself in a strength that cannot be shaken. These gestures do not erase emotions instantly, but they shift the energy so that emotion no longer controls you. The beauty of mudras is that they require no special tools, no elaborate rituals. Your hands are always with you. The gestures can be practiced in silence, in meditation, or even discreetly in daily life. They become companions, quiet reminders that you are not helpless against negativity. With each practice, the body learns, and with learning, transformation becomes natural. Mudra practice also connects you with a lineage. For centuries, monks, practitioners, and seekers have sat with these gestures, allowing them to reshape inner life. When you hold a mudra, you are not alone. You are joining countless others who have touched the same gesture in their darkest nights and found light. This shared practice carries a subtle strength, a reminder that the path of release is not only yours, but part of a human journey toward freedom. What begins as a simple hand gesture deepens over time into a profound shift. At first, it may feel awkward or symbolic, but as you continue, the body remembers, the mind aligns, and negativity loosens its grip. You begin to see that every clenched hand can open, every trembling gesture can find stillness, every restless tapping can dissolve into peace. The alchemy of mudra is not about mysticism, it is about transformation through presence, about reshaping energy with awareness until even the heaviest weight feels lighter. So as you move deeper on this journey, let your hands become guides. Let them remind you that release is possible not only in thought, but in the very fabric of your being. With each gesture, you invite clarity, you invite balance, you invite freedom. And in that invitation, the dark currents of negativity lose their power, replaced by the steady flow of peace that has always been waiting within you. You have seen how even the smallest gesture of the hands can redirect energy, soften anger, and open pathways of peace. The body speaks a language older than words, and when used with awareness, it dissolves what once felt unbearable. Yet there is an even deeper medicine, one that requires no movement at all. It is found not in gesture, not in sound, but in the absence of both. This is the practice of noble silence, mourner, a silence that is not emptiness, but a living presence, a silence that heals the mind by stopping the endless storm of inner chatter. Most people fear silence. They rush to fill it with noise, conversation, or distraction. When silence arrives, the mind panics because without noise, it is forced to face itself. But the silence of Buddhist practice is not absence or avoidance. It is deliberate, purposeful, chosen. It is the silence that holds you steady while thoughts rise and fall like waves. In this silence, mental turbulence loses its strength. The constant narration in your head begins to weaken, and the toxic stories you repeat to yourself about not being enough, about being wrong, about being trapped begin to dissolve. When you enter noble silence, you are no longer feeding the mind's addiction to sound. Every argument, every regret, every fantasy has its life because you keep replaying it in words. Words inside, words outside. But silence cuts the chain. It interrupts the loop before it can build momentum. In silence, thoughts are not pushed away, but they cannot cling. They come, they fade, they leave no trace, like footprints on the shore washed away by the tide. This silence is medicine because the greatest suffering does not come from events themselves, but from the constant commentary you place upon them. Something happens, and the mind begins its chatter. Why me? What if? Always. Never. Again and again. Each word adds weight. Each phrase deepens the wound. But in noble silence, there is no commentary, only the raw presence of what island, and presence without commentary is bearable. Even pain, when stripped of the stories around it, becomes lighter. Buddhist monks have long practiced silence as a way of breaking through delusion. Not only outer silence refraining from speech, but inner silence, quieting the need to label and explain. This does not mean suppressing thought, but recognizing thought as unnecessary noise. The discipline of mourner is not mute stillness, but mindful stillness. It is choosing to refrain so that clarity can arise. In daily life, silence begins simply. Choosing not to reply to every provocation, choosing not to add fuel to conflict with words, choosing to pause before speaking. Each pause is a doorway. In that pause, the heat of anger cools, the urge to lash out fades, the energy of resentment dissipates. Silence gives the space where reactivity cannot grow. Without silence, negativity multiplies. With silence, it loses oxygen. But silence does more than neutralize conflict. It becomes a direct practice of returning home. When you sit quietly, without speaking, without seeking distraction, the mind first resists. It shouts louder, it throws thoughts at you. This is the turbulence rising. But if you stay, if you hold to silence, the storm eventually passes. What remains is a spaciousness deeper than thought, a calm that does not depend on conditions. This calm is not something you create. It was always there, hidden beneath the noise. Noble silence is the key that reveals it. In silence, the senses sharpen. You notice the breath, the beating of the heart, the subtle sounds around you. Life feels more vivid, more real. And in that vividness, the toxic weight of inner stories begins to fade. Anxiety often thrives because you are trapped in imagined futures. Guilt thrives because you are replaying past mistakes. Both require words, constant narration. Silence pulls you into the present, where neither past nor future has control. Silence also teaches humility. When words are removed, the ego loses one of its strongest weapons. You no longer need to defend, explain, or prove yourself. You simply are. And in being, the ego's grip loosens. The craving for validation fades. This humility is not weakness, it is strength, because it shows that your worth is not bound by speech or by how others see you. You discover that you are complete even without explanation. The discipline of silence has been part of countless traditions because it cuts to the heart of suffering. When the Buddha was confronted with certain unanswerable questions about the origin of the universe, about what lies beyond death, he often remained silent. That silence was not ignorance. It was wisdom, showing that some questions are only traps of the mind. By refusing to feed them, he pointed directly to freedom. In the same way, when your mind asks, "Why am I like this? Why can't I escape?" Silence is often the truest answer. Not because there is no answer, but because the question itself is the trap. Silence becomes a shield against toxic chatter, not by pushing it away, but by refusing to amplify it. You do not need to wrestle each thought. You simply stop giving it your voice. The thought arises, but you do not repeat it, not even internally. You return to the breath, to the space of silence, and the thought fades. Each time you do this, the habit of clinging weakens. Over time, silence becomes your default state, and words become tools, not masters. In relationships, silence can be even more powerful. Not the cold silence of withdrawal, but the noble silence that listens deeply. When you remain silent while another speaks, you give them the gift of true attention. Without rushing to respond, you hear not only the words but the heart behind them. This kind of silence heals. It turns conflict into understanding, distance into connection. It shows that silence is not emptiness, but presence in its purest form. Silence also has a cleansing effect on energy. Words scatter energy outward. Constant chatter drains the mind, leaving you restless and depleted. In silence, energy gathers inward, becoming steady. This gathered energy heals the nervous system, balances emotions, and restores clarity. This is why, after a period of silence, even a short one, the mind feels lighter, refreshed. It is not absence, but replenishment. The practice of silence can be cultivated in simple ways. Setting aside time each day to be without words, even for a few minutes. Walking in silence, eating in silence, sitting in silence. Turning off the noise of devices, the constant input of information. In these moments, the mind learns to rest. At first it may rebel, but over time it begins to crave silence, to return to it as naturally as one returns to breath. There is also a deeper level of silence, silence of the heart. This is when not only words, but judgments, comparisons, and inner commentary are released. To meet someone without inner chatter, without labeling, without categorizing, is to meet them truly. To face your own experience without commentary is to face life directly. This silence is radical because it strips away all filters. What remains is raw reality, free from the cage of thought. Noble silence does not mean silence forever. Speech has its place. Words can heal, guide, and connect. But words used without silence become empty noise. Silence teaches you to value speech, to use it with care. It is said that when you cultivate silence, your words become like jewels, rare, precious, placed with intention. In this way, silence does not erase expression, but refines it. The medicine of silence also works in the deepest struggles. Depression, anxiety, grief, all are magnified by constant mental noise. When silence is practiced, even these heavy states become lighter. Not because the pain disappears instantly, but because the endless commentary weakens. In silence, pain is felt directly, without the added layers of "this will never end" or "I cannot bear this." Stripped of commentary, pain is still there, but it is not overwhelming. It is just sensation, just energy moving through. This shift alone can save a life. Silence is also a preparation for death. At the end, when words fade, silence remains. Those who have practiced noble silence carry with them a familiarity, a comfort in that stillness. They are not afraid of the absence of words, because they have lived in it already. For them, silence is not an end, but a homecoming. So as you move from gesture into stillness, let silence become your medicine. Let it wash over the toxic chatter, cool the fires of anger, soften the grip of fear. Let it be a shield, a refuge, a guide. Do not fear it, welcome it. For in silence, the deepest truths are revealed. Beneath the noise of thought, beneath the weight of negativity, there is always a space of quiet waiting. Step into that space, and you will know. Silence itself is freedom. Silence has shown its medicine, the way it untangles the knots of thought and allows space for healing to rise. But silence alone is not the whole path. Life continues, and with every step, every glance, every word, something subtle is being shaped. The mind leaves behind traces. The heart leaves behind marks. These traces do not disappear into nothing. They accumulate, they weave together, and they shape what comes next. This is karma, not fate, not punishment, but the natural echo of your actions and reactions. And while great choices leave visible marks, it is the smallest daily reactions that quietly shape the cycles of negativity you experience. Most people think of karma as a distant result of great deeds or great mistakes. But karma is not far away. It is near, forming in every small movement of thought and intention. The slight tightening of your jaw when insulted, the sharp tone in a careless reply, the silent resentment that lingers even when you say nothing, all of these are seeds. They may seem insignificant in the moment, but they settle into the soil of the mind, and from them patterns grow. Negativity does not usually come in grand storms. It comes in drips, in drops, in micro-reactions repeated day after day. The irritation at traffic, the envy at someone's success, the dismissal of your own worth, these tiny moments of clinging and aversion accumulate like dust. A single speck of dust is nothing, but left untouched, day after day, it builds into a thickness that clouds the whole surface. This is how karmic weight gathers, silently, without you even noticing. When these micro-reactions pile up, they form habits. A thought of anger repeated becomes a mood. A mood repeated becomes a trait. A trait repeated becomes a destiny. Karma is simply this process, the weaving of repeated reactions into patterns that then dictate how you see, how you feel, and how you act. In this way, your present moment is always both the fruit of past seeds and the planting ground for future ones. Breaking the cycle begins with awareness. Not grand vows or dramatic changes, but noticing the tiny movements of mind that create your world. The sharp thought that says, "I'm not good enough." The subtle blame toward another. The quiet tightening when plans change. Each of these is a karmic imprint, small but powerful when repeated. To see them as they happen is the first act of freedom. Once awareness is present, you can choose differently. The next time irritation arises, you can pause instead of feeding it. That pause alone interrupts the karmic chain. Instead of adding another layer of negativity, you plant the seed of patience. The next time jealousy stirs, you can breathe and recognize it as passing energy rather than solid truth. That recognition plants the seed of equanimity. Slowly, moment by moment, you change the soil. Negativity weakens, not because it is destroyed, but because it is not fed. The Buddha often described karma not as a punishment, but as a natural law, like gravity. What you release into the world through thoughts, words, or deeds returns in some form. Throw anger, and anger echoes back. Throw kindness, and kindness ripples outward. But here is the subtle truth. Even if no one else hears your angry thought, it still shapes you. The karmic imprint begins inside, long before it reaches the world outside. This is why inner work is as vital as outer action. Every unspoken thought matters. Every silent judgment matters. They are all seeds. Negativity thrives because micro-reactions often go unnoticed. You see the storm, but not the raindrops. By training yourself to notice the drops, you prevent the storm from forming. This is the essence of mindfulness. Not just watching the breath, but watching the subtle ways you react to each moment. Do you tense when criticized? Do you harden when ignored? Do you glow with pride when praised? These micro-reactions are karma in motion. Seeing them clearly is the first step to reshaping them. Breaking cycles also requires understanding that every reaction has momentum. A harsh word today may not ruin a relationship, but repeated harshness erodes trust over time. A single act of self-doubt may not paralyze you, but repeated self-doubt builds into a cage. Karma accumulates not in dramatic bursts, but in repetition. This is why the smallest change, repeated consistently, transforms destiny. One pause instead of anger, one breath instead of complaint, one kind thought instead of bitterness. Each is small, but repeated, they turn the tide. It is also important to see how collective karma forms. A family, a workplace, a community, all are shaped by repeated micro-reactions. In a family where criticism outweighs encouragement, negativity becomes the atmosphere. In a workplace where gossip thrives, distrust grows as the karmic result. In a culture where fear dominates, aggression multiplies. Karma is not only individual, it is shared. Breaking the cycle means not only watching your own reactions, but recognizing how they ripple outward into the lives of others. One of the most powerful practices for shifting karma is restraint. Restraint does not mean suppression. It means consciously holding back from releasing a reaction that would plant a seed of harm. The moment you feel anger rising, you pause. The pause is the seed of freedom. In that pause, the karmic chain is interrupted, and a new possibility opens. Restraint is not weakness, it is strength, because it breaks the automatic repetition of harm. Over time, this builds new karmic patterns of patience and clarity. Another essential practice is replacement. When you notice a negative micro-reaction, you don't just stop it, you replace it with something healing. If the mind starts to complain, you replace it with gratitude. If envy arises, you replace it with joy for another's success. If irritation grows, you replace it with compassion for the other's struggle. Each replacement plants a new seed, and over time, the new seeds grow stronger than the old ones. Karma also teaches responsibility. Every reaction is your choice. The mind likes to blame circumstances, but karma shows that how you respond is always within your hands. You cannot control the words others speak, but you can control whether you repeat them in anger or release them in silence. You cannot control every loss, but you can control whether loss becomes bitterness or depth. This responsibility is not a burden, but a liberation, because it means you are not trapped. The future is not fixed. It is shaped by what you plant now. To deepen this practice, notice not only obvious negativity, but also subtle habits. Sarcasm may seem harmless, but repeated, it plants seeds of cynicism. Self-criticism may feel like motivation, but repeated, it builds despair. Even small acts of neglect, failing to listen fully, failing to care for your body, failing to rest, are karmic imprints. The law is impartial. Every seed matters. To cultivate freedom, you must care even for the smallest seeds. Over time, as you practice watching and reshaping micro-reactions, you begin to feel lighter. The heaviness that once seemed permanent dissolves because you are no longer carrying the weight of accumulated negativity. Each pause, each replacement, each act of restraint clears dust from the mirror of the mind. And as the dust clears, clarity shines naturally. The cycle of negativity is broken not by one great act, but by countless small shifts. Karma is built moment by moment, and freedom is also built moment by moment. To see this is to step into true power. No moment is wasted, because every moment plants a seed. And when seeds of clarity, compassion, and patience are planted again and again, the garden of your life transforms. So, as you move forward, carry this truth. Silence has taught you to rest, mudras have taught you to guide energy, and now karma shows you that every reaction is a seed. Do not underestimate the smallest seed. From it, entire forests grow. From a single pause, a whole life can change. By tending carefully to these small daily reactions, you are no longer trapped by negativity. You become the gardener of your own freedom. You have seen how karma is shaped not by grand gestures but by the smallest seeds, how every reaction plants a future that eventually returns to you. That truth teaches responsibility, but it also reveals an even deeper opportunity. What if negative energy itself could be turned into nourishment, instead of poison? What if pain, sorrow, and anger were not only something to avoid, but raw material you could transform into healing? This is the secret of Tonglen, a Tibetan practice often described as breathing in the suffering of others and sending out compassion. Yet its depth goes beyond compassion. It is also a way of recycling negativity itself, using it as fuel for clarity, strength, and wisdom. At first, the practice seems counterintuitive. The ordinary mind recoils at suffering. It avoids pain, rejects discomfort, resists anything unpleasant. Tonglen reverses that habit. Instead of pushing away, it invites you to breathe in what is dark, heavy, or toxic. On the in-breath, you take it fully into awareness. Then, on the out-breath, you send out light, healing, peace. What makes this powerful is not that you are absorbing pain literally, but that you are dismantling the reflex of aversion. You are breaking the pattern that feeds karma, the habit of pushing away negativity and thereby strengthening it. To practice in this way is to discover that negativity has no permanent nature. It can be transformed in the furnace of awareness. Just as compost turns waste into fertile soil, Tonglen turns the weight of suffering into strength. Breathing in the pain of the world does not crush you. Instead, it breaks the illusion that you must be separate, untouched, defended. It reveals that the mind has the capacity to face darkness and turn it into light. The first level of Tonglen is simple. You notice your own suffering, the tightness in the chest, the heaviness of sadness, the fire of anger. Instead of running from it, you breathe it in. You allow it to fill awareness fully, without denial. Then, as you breathe out, you release compassion toward yourself. Not pity, not indulgence, but a warm acceptance. This alone changes everything. Because most suffering is magnified by resistance. By breathing it in, you cut resistance. By breathing out compassion, you soften the wound. From here, the practice expands. You begin to breathe not only for yourself, but for others. When you feel pain, you remember that countless beings feel the same pain. Your breath becomes a bridge. On the in-breath, you take in not only your sorrow, but the sorrow of all who share it. On the out-breath, you send out relief, comfort, clarity. In this way, your own suffering becomes the key to empathy. Instead of isolating you, it connects you to all beings. But Tonglen is not only about compassion in the ordinary sense. It is about alchemy. Each breath becomes an act of transformation. The heavy energy of grief, breathed in, becomes the exhale of calm. The sting of anger, breathed in, becomes the exhale of patience. The burn of envy, breathed in, becomes the exhale of joy for others. What was once toxic becomes healing. This reverses the entire cycle of karma. Instead of planting seeds of aversion, you plant seeds of transformation. The deeper wisdom here is that negative energy does not need to be destroyed. It can be used. Just as fire can burn or warm, negativity can consume or transform, depending on how it is met. Tonglen trains you to meet it in a way that transforms. This is why it is said to be the practice of warriors, not warriors who fight, but warriors who face suffering without retreat. To work with Tonglen beyond compassion is to see it as energy practice. On the inhalation, you are not poisoning yourself but opening the heart wide enough to hold even darkness. The breath becomes a crucible. Within awareness, the heaviness dissolves. On the exhalation, what remains is clarity, love, peace. This cycle repeats, and with repetition, the habit of aversion weakens. Instead of running from pain, you meet it directly and reshape it. This practice also cuts through ego. The ego thrives on separation, on protecting me from them. Tonglen dissolves that boundary. When you breathe in the suffering of others, you stop living as a fortress and begin living as an open field. The ego says, if I take in suffering, I will be destroyed. But practice reveals the opposite. When you open to suffering, you are not destroyed, you are expanded. Your capacity grows. What once felt unbearable becomes bearable. What once felt overwhelming becomes light. There is also a profound psychological effect. When you stop fearing suffering, your anxiety lessens. Much of human fear is not about pain itself, but about the anticipation of pain, the dread of it. Tonglen cuts this dread. By deliberately breathing in suffering, you train the mind to stop running. And when you stop running, fear loses its teeth. Negativity no longer rules by threat, because you have already faced it willingly. Practicing Tonglen also teaches the hidden strength of compassion. Compassion is not fragile, it is fierce. It has the power to take in what is unbearable and return healing. This is why the practice is often compared to the breath of a great bodhisattva, one who vows to liberate all beings. The bodhisattva breathes in the suffering of countless beings and breathes out infinite compassion. In this way, suffering is recycled endlessly into healing. Beyond the personal, Tonglen can be practiced for the world. You read of violence, injustice, despair. Instead of turning away in numbness, you breathe it in. You allow yourself to feel the weight that so many carry. On the out-breath, you release peace, relief, and healing energy. This does not solve problems outwardly, but it transforms your inner relationship. Instead of being paralyzed by the world's pain, you become an active participant in healing it energetically. This subtle shift changes not only you, but how you act in the world. The practice also dismantles pride. When you breathe in the suffering of others, you are reminded that you are not above pain. You share the same vulnerability as every being. This humbles the heart and opens it. And when you breathe out healing, you are reminded that your life has power, that even in silence, your breath can serve others. To practice Tonglen deeply, you must also let go of perfection. Some breaths will feel easy, others heavy. Some days the heart opens, other days it resists. This is not failure. Every breath is part of the training. Even resistance, when acknowledged, becomes material for transformation. You breathe in the resistance, you breathe out patience. In this way, even the obstacles become fuel. What makes Tonglen so radical is that it overturns the instinct to avoid negativity. Every other strategy seeks to escape pain. Tonglen faces it directly and uses it. In this way, nothing is wasted. Every sorrow becomes fuel for empathy. Every anger becomes fuel for clarity. Every fear becomes fuel for courage. Life stops being divided into good and bad, pleasant and unpleasant. Everything becomes workable. Over time, Tonglen reshapes the nervous system. The breath becomes a rhythm of courage. The mind becomes less reactive, less fearful. The heart becomes wider, more spacious. Negative energy still arises, but it no longer overwhelms. It is breathed in, transformed, breathed out. A continuous cycle of healing. This is the secret of Tonglen beyond compassion. It is a practice of recycling energy. Instead of trying to block negativity or destroy it, you learn to transmute it. Like a great wheel, the breath turns suffering into peace, over and over. This practice is not about martyrdom or self-sacrifice. It is about discovering the vastness of the mind, the capacity to face all things and not be broken. So let each breath become this alchemy. Inhale the pain, the heaviness, the darkness. Let awareness hold it, let it dissolve. Exhale light, healing, peace. Repeat, again and again. With each cycle, the weight you once feared becomes the strength you now embody. And in this transformation, negativity loses its power. What was once poison becomes medicine. What was once burden becomes gift. And you, through the simple act of breathing, become a channel of healing in a world that desperately needs it. Breath has shown itself as a bridge, a way of turning pain into healing, of making what was heavy into something that carries light. Tonglen teaches that energy need not be wasted, that even sorrow and anger can be reshaped into gifts. Yet there is another trap the mind falls into: the extremes of how we deal with emotions. Some cling to them fiercely, drowning in indulgence, while others bury them so deeply that they rot in silence. Both paths lead to suffering. The Buddha's wisdom cuts through these extremes with the teaching of the middle way, the path that neither rejects nor clings, but walks a steady ground where emotions are seen, felt, and released without chains. When emotions surge, the usual instinct is either to act them out or to shut them down. Acting them out, yelling, accusing, spiraling into blame, creates more harm and plants deeper seeds of karmic heaviness. Suppressing them, pretending they don't exist, locking them in the body, turns them into poison that leaks slowly through tension, anxiety, and despair. Both reactions come from imbalance. The middle way shows a third possibility: to let emotions flow through awareness without falling into either indulgence or suppression. This balance is not weakness or avoidance. It is the strength of staying steady while the fire burns. To practice the middle way with emotions is to acknowledge them fully. Yes, anger is here. Yes, sorrow is here, without becoming enslaved to them. It is to feel the body shake, the chest tighten, the tears rise, but to stay present enough not to lash out or deny. This requires discipline, but it also brings freedom, because the emotion loses its power when it cannot control your speech or actions. The Buddha himself discovered the middle way after years of extremes. He knew indulgence in pleasure led to craving, and he knew harsh self-denial led to weakness. Neither brought peace. Only when he abandoned both extremes and sat in balanced awareness did awakening unfold. The same principle applies to the inner life of emotions. To swing from overindulgence to suppression is to repeat the cycle of suffering. Balance is where the chain breaks. To walk this path, you must first see the cost of extremes. Indulgence in anger feels powerful in the moment, but afterward it leaves regret, broken trust, and karmic weight. Suppression of anger may keep the peace outwardly, but inwardly it festers, hardening into bitterness or exploding later in destructive ways. Indulgence in sorrow drowns you in despair, while suppression of sorrow numbs the heart, cutting off compassion. Both paths distort the truth of the emotion, turning it into a burden instead of a teacher. The middle way treats emotions as passing weather. When rain falls, you don't scream at it or pretend the sky is clear. You open an umbrella or stand still until it passes. Likewise, when anger arises, you don't let it dictate your words, nor do you deny it. You let it be present in awareness, you feel its heat, and you let it pass. The same with joy. You do not cling desperately, nor reject it out of fear. You experience it fully and allow it to fade when its time is done. Practicing this balance requires mindfulness. You must notice the first stirrings of emotion before they sweep you away. This noticing is not judgment but recognition. This is anger. This is fear. This is longing. Naming the emotion softly in your own mind creates space between you and the feeling. That space is the ground of the middle way. In that space, you can choose how to respond instead of being dragged by habit. Discipline of breath supports this balance. Breathing deeply and steadily when emotions rise gives the body a stable rhythm, reminding the nervous system that it does not need to spiral. Breath anchors you in the present, holding you steady while the wave of feeling crests and falls. Without breath, emotions pull you into their storm. With breath, you stand firm as the storm passes through. Another part of balance is compassion toward yourself. Many people believe emotions should be controlled or destroyed, and when they fail to do so, they add guilt on top of pain. The middle way teaches that emotions are natural. They arise, they fade. The goal is not perfection but balance. To treat yourself harshly for feeling anger or sorrow is to fall into suppression. To excuse every harmful action because of emotion is to fall into indulgence. Compassion means allowing yourself to feel without judgment, while also taking responsibility not to harm. Balance also requires patience. The mind is conditioned by years of habit. If you are used to suppressing, at first you may swing too far into indulgence. If you are used to indulging, at first you may swing too far into suppression when you try to change. The middle way is not reached in a single step, but through steady practice. Each moment of awareness brings you closer. Each time you pause before reacting, you strengthen balance. Each time you let an emotion flow without clinging or pushing away, you deepen freedom. There is also wisdom in seeing that emotions themselves are not enemies. Anger can reveal injustice. Fear can alert you to danger. Sorrow can open compassion. Joy can connect you with gratitude. But when any of these are indulged or suppressed, their wisdom is lost. The middle way allows the wisdom to shine without being distorted. By neither drowning in the emotion nor burying it, you receive its teaching and let it go. In relationships, this balance is transformative. When conflict arises, indulgence leads to harsh words. Suppression leads to cold silence. Both create distance. Balance allows you to acknowledge hurt without attacking, to express truth without cruelty. It allows listening without defensiveness, speaking without venom. Over time, this balance creates trust, because others feel your steadiness. They see that you are not controlled by extremes. The middle way also reveals itself in how you hold joy and pleasure. Clinging to joy creates craving, a desperate attempt to make it last. Rejecting joy creates numbness, a refusal to feel alive. Balance allows you to enjoy fully without attachment, to savor beauty, love, laughter, and let them pass without despair when they end. This frees you from both craving and emptiness. Practicing the middle way in emotions also shapes karma directly. Every time you avoid indulgence, you stop planting seeds of harm. Every time you avoid suppression, you stop planting seeds of inner poison. Instead, you plant seeds of clarity, patience, and wisdom. These seeds grow into a steady mind, a calm heart, a balanced life. This is how daily practice becomes liberation. The middle way is not a rigid formula. It is a living balance that shifts with each moment. Sometimes more expression is needed, sometimes more restraint. The key is awareness. Awareness shows you when you are leaning too far toward indulgence or suppression and brings you back to center. Like a walker on a path, you adjust step by step, always returning to balance. Over time, this path transforms how you see emotions entirely. They are no longer threats or temptations, no longer chains or weapons. They are movements of the mind, waves in the ocean, reflections in the mirror. You feel them fully, release them fully, and remain free. This freedom is not cold detachment, but a steady warmth, a clarity that can face all emotions without being ruled. So, as you carry forward, remember what breath has taught you in Tonglen. Transformation is always possible. Remember what karma has shown. Every reaction matters. Now let the middle way be your compass in the storms of emotion. Neither clinging nor denying, neither drowning nor numbing. Walk steadily, feel fully, release freely. In this balance lies the heart of freedom. Walking the middle way shows you how to stay steady between drowning in emotions and burying them. But balance is not only about what happens inside you, it also extends outward into how you see others. Much of human suffering comes not only from our own storms, but from the weight we carry against other people, the grudges, the anger, the resentment that never seems to leave. Even when the moment has passed, the wound remains, feeding bitterness day after day. It feels personal, it feels justified, and yet it poisons the one who carries it most. Here is where Thich Nhat Hanh's teaching of interbeing offers freedom. It shows that the walls between self and other are illusions, and when you see through those walls, resentment dissolves like mist under sunlight. Resentment thrives on separation. You tell yourself, this person harmed me, they are different from me, they are the enemy. From that thought, anger hardens into hatred. But interbeing teaches that nothing exists on its own. You are not separate from the one you resent. They are part of you, just as you are part of them. The air you breathe, the food you eat, the language you speak, all come from countless others. Even the person you resent is shaped by conditions beyond their control, conditions that touch you too. To see this truth is to feel the tight grip of hatred weaken. Consider resentment toward a parent. Perhaps they failed to give you love or protection. Interbeing reveals that they too were shaped by their parents, their struggles, their wounds. What they could not give you was not because you were unworthy, but because they had not received it themselves. Seeing this does not excuse harm, but it softens resentment. It shows that suffering flows through generations like a river, and by understanding it, you stop the current from continuing. The same is true in daily conflicts. Someone insults you, and resentment rises. But interbeing asks you to look deeper. Where did their words come from? Perhaps from insecurity, from their own pain, from conditions you cannot see. When you realize that their behavior is not born in isolation, your anger shifts. You see that they too are caught in causes and effects, just as you are. Hatred thrives on the illusion of choice in isolation. They chose to hurt me. Interbeing reveals that choices arise from conditions, and that recognition makes room for compassion where only bitterness lived before. Interbeing also reveals the futility of resentment. To hate another is to hate part of yourself. The line between self and other is thin. If you hurt your neighbor, you live in a weaker community. If you carry hatred toward your family, you poison your own heart. If you despise humanity, you despise the very fabric that sustains your life. Resentment, then, is self-harm disguised as justice. Interbeing strips away the disguise, showing that there is no true victory in holding on to anger. This truth is not abstract. You can see it directly. Look at a sheet of paper. In it is the sunshine that grew the trees, the rain that fed the roots, the logger who cut the wood, the teacher who taught you to read. Without the sun, the paper would not exist. Without the rain, no tree. Without the tree, no paper. Each thing contains everything else. Thich Nhat Hanh called this interbeing. And if even a sheet of paper holds the universe within it, how much more deeply are you connected to the people around you? Resentment collapses when you see that you and the one you resent are not two separate islands, but threads in the same fabric. To dissolve resentment through interbeing is not to deny pain. Hurt is real. Betrayal cuts deep. But holding on to hatred multiplies pain, while understanding transforms it. When you see that the one who hurt you is also suffering, that their harm was born of conditions, the sharpness of resentment softens. You may still protect yourself, still set boundaries, but the poison of hatred no longer runs through your veins. This shift requires practice. When resentment rises, pause and trace its roots. Ask, what conditions gave rise to this? Where did this person's action come from? Often, you will find a chain of suffering that stretches beyond them, beyond you, into a web of causes. The moment you see this, resentment loosens, because you realize there is no single enemy to fight. The enemy is suffering itself, and it is shared. Interbeing also invites gratitude as an antidote. When you look at someone you resent, instead of only seeing harm, you also see what they have given you, even indirectly. A parent who hurt you also gave you life. A rival who angered you also revealed your strength. A stranger who insulted you also taught you patience. This does not erase the harm, but it balances the view. Hatred narrows vision to only the wound. Interbeing widens vision to include the whole. Gratitude arises, and resentment loses fuel. This teaching also extends beyond personal resentment to larger conflicts between groups, nations, cultures. Wars are fueled by the belief that we are separate from them. Interbeing reveals that no side can exist without the other. The farmer in one land depends on the rains that pass over another. The worker in one nation depends on resources from another. The health of one people depends on the peace of all. When this truth is seen, hatred between groups becomes as senseless as one hand resenting the other. To practice interbeing daily, cultivate awareness of connection. When you eat, remember the hands that grew and harvested the food. When you breathe, remember the trees and oceans that create oxygen. When you look at another person, remember their hidden struggles and unseen joys. Each moment of awareness is a thread woven into understanding, and understanding is the undoing of resentment. The deepest fruit of interbeing is compassion. Compassion arises not from pity, but from recognition. Your pain is my pain. Your joy is my joy. Resentment cannot survive in this recognition, because to hate you would be to hate myself. To withhold forgiveness from you would be to imprison myself. Compassion is not softness but clarity. It sees the web that connects all beings and acts in harmony with it. Over time, interbeing reshapes the heart. Where once hatred felt justified, now it feels heavy and unnecessary. Where once resentment seemed permanent, now it seems like a cloud that drifts by. You realize that dissolving resentment is not a gift you give to others, but a liberation you give yourself. By releasing the illusion of separation, you release the burden of bitterness. So let this truth settle. Balance has taught you steadiness, but interbeing teaches you connection. To walk the middle way in your own heart is freedom, but to see that no being stands alone is love. When you breathe with this awareness, resentment cannot take root. You see yourself in all, and all in yourself. And in that vision, hatred melts into understanding, and understanding blossoms into peace. Seeing the web of interbeing loosens the chains of resentment, showing that no one stands apart, that every action is born from countless conditions. Yet even as this truth is known, another force still clings tightly, the sense of I, the hardened belief that there is a fixed self that can be harmed, insulted, or diminished. This is where anger takes root most deeply. The Buddhist teaching of non-self, anatta, reveals that what you call I is not a permanent entity but a flowing process. When this is seen clearly, the very foundation of anger collapses, because anger feeds on the illusion of a self that must be defended. Anger often begins with a story. They disrespected me, they betrayed me, they hurt me. Notice the repeated word, me. Without the sense of me, the insult would lose its sting. Non-self does not mean that you vanish or that your life has no value. It means that what you take to be solid identity is in truth a collection of shifting elements. Body, feelings, perceptions, thoughts, consciousness, all arising and fading moment by moment. When you cling to this bundle as I, anger ignites at every challenge. But when you see the bundle as impermanent and without a fixed owner, the fuel of anger weakens. Think of the body. It is called mine. Yet every cell is constantly changing. Skin sheds, blood flows, hair falls, organs replace themselves. 10 years ago, almost none of the physical matter you now call your body was the same. The body is a river, not a rock. If the body has no permanent core, then who is the I being insulted? The mind is the same. Thoughts appear and vanish. Emotions rise and fall. Perceptions shift from moment to moment. If anger defined the self, you would be angry forever. But anger comes, burns, and fades. If joy defined the self, you would be joyful forever, but joy too passes. Non-self shows that there is no fixed owner behind the changing stream. There is only the stream itself. When anger flares, it feels like a solid wall. But look closer, and you see it is built from fragile bricks. A memory, an expectation, a sense of self being threatened. Each brick is impermanent. Each brick is dependent on countless conditions. Remove even one, and the wall weakens. See through the illusion of solidity, and the wall collapses. This truth is liberating because it reveals that anger is not your essence. It is not who you are. It is an event, not an identity. When you forget this, you say, "I am angry," and the ego grips the emotion tightly. But when you remember non-self, you say, "Anger is present," and already the grip loosens. You shift from being the fire to simply witnessing its flame. The flame cannot burn the witness. The ego resists this teaching fiercely. Ego thrives on separation, on the belief that I must always be right, respected, and acknowledged. When any of these are threatened, anger arises as ego's shield. But non-self exposes the shield as empty. What is there to defend if there is no fixed I to be damaged? The insult strikes, but it strikes only air. The betrayal cuts, but it cuts only illusion. This is not passivity, it is clarity. Seeing non-self does not mean tolerating harm or avoiding boundaries. It means responding without the poison of ego. You can address injustice firmly, even fiercely, but without anger clouding the mind. Action taken without ego is clean, precise, and free from karmic residue. Action taken from ego multiplies suffering, even when justified. The Buddha taught that clinging to self is the root of dukkha, suffering. Anger is one of its strongest branches. When the sense of self is challenged, anger blossoms to protect it. But when self is seen as illusion, anger has nothing to protect. What remains is space to see clearly, to respond wisely, to let go. Consider this in daily life. Someone criticizes you harshly. Ego flares. How dare they? Don't they know who I am? Anger burns hot. But if you pause and recall non-self, the question changes. Who is this I being attacked? Is it the body? The body changes. Is it the mind? The mind changes. Is it the personality? The personality shifts with age, with mood, with memory. The I being defended cannot be found. And in that moment, anger weakens. The criticism may still sting, but it no longer defines you. Another example, resentment toward betrayal. Ego says, "I deserved better, they wronged me." This tightens into hatred. But non-self sees that I is not fixed, nor is they. Both are processes, streams of conditions flowing together and apart. The betrayal arises from conditions, their ignorance, their pain, their past. It is not an attack on a permanent me, because no such me exists. With this vision, bitterness dissolves into understanding, even if the wound remains. Non-self also transforms how you view others' anger. When someone lashes out, it is easy to take it personally, to feel attacked. But if there is no solid self in you, there is also no solid self in them. Their anger is not their essence. It is a temporary storm, born from conditions. Just as your anger does not define you, theirs does not define them. This view softens judgment and opens compassion. You see not an enemy but a being caught in illusion, suffering under the same delusion of self. The practice of non-self is not about erasing individuality. It is about loosening the grip of ego. The body still lives, the mind still thinks, the heart still feels. But the clinging to mine, me, and I is released. Without that clinging, emotions lose their sharpness. Anger becomes a passing cloud, not a permanent identity. Negativity becomes a ripple, not a prison. Daily practice makes this real. Each time anger arises, question it gently. Who is angry? Where is the self that must be defended? Look for it, and you will not find it. This searching itself is the practice. Over time, anger loses credibility. The ego tries to shout, "Protect me," but you see through the illusion, and the shout fades into silence. The fruit of this practice is freedom. Freedom not from emotion, but from enslavement to ego. Freedom to act without being consumed. Freedom to feel without being chained. When you no longer carry the burden of defending an illusion, your energy flows into clarity, compassion, and peace. So, as you continue, carry this truth with you. Resentment dissolves when you see into being, but anger itself dissolves when you see non-self. The ego is the root of its fire, and ego is nothing but illusion. When illusion fades, the fire finds no fuel. What remains is a vast openness, where even the sharpest insult cannot wound, and even the deepest anger cannot bind. In that openness, you are already free. The illusion of a permanent self is what gives anger its sharpest edge. When the ego is seen for what it is, only a shifting pattern of body, mind, and habit, the fire of negativity begins to lose its fuel. Yet, knowing that emotions are not your essence does not mean they vanish instantly. They continue to appear, often with the same force, pulling at attention, demanding reaction. What is needed then is not only insight, but also a path of training, a way to tame and transform these wild forces without suppression or indulgence. Zen offers such a path through the ox-herding pictures, a series of parables that describe the journey of taming the mind. Though often spoken of in terms of spiritual awakening, they are equally powerful metaphors for working with emotions and finding liberation from their grip. The first of the ox-herding pictures depicts the search. The ox, a symbol of the unruly mind and the storms of emotion, has wandered into the wilderness. At this stage, negativity feels overwhelming. Anger appears as if it were an unstoppable beast, fear as if it were a shadow that cannot be escaped. The search represents the first step of awareness, the recognition that these forces exist and that they shape your life. Without awareness, the ox is invisible, and you are dragged unconsciously by its power. To search is to admit the mind is not yet free, and the work of training must begin. The second picture reveals the tracks. This is the moment when you begin to notice patterns in your emotions. Perhaps you see that anger always flares when your pride is touched, or that sorrow returns when certain memories surface. These are the footprints of the ox. By studying them, you begin to understand how negativity arises. This stage is crucial because it shifts emotions from being mysterious forces to being knowable processes. When you can trace their tracks, you are no longer entirely helpless. The third picture shows the ox itself. Here, you encounter emotion directly. You see anger as it rises, raw and powerful, no longer hidden. It is not easy to face. The ox resists, and the mind trembles. But this moment is essential, to meet the emotion fully, without turning away, without masking it. You learn that the ox is not infinite in power. It can be seen, acknowledged, and engaged with. This is the courage of presence, the willingness to look at what you fear inside yourself. The fourth picture depicts the struggle to catch the ox. Emotions are not tamed easily. Anger bucks, sorrow pulls, desire resists. The training requires discipline, patience, and effort. Here, meditation, mindfulness, and breath become the rope and halter. Each practice gives you a tool to steady the mind when the emotion tries to run wild. It is not about force or violence. To beat the ox is to harm yourself. Instead, you guide it firmly, returning again and again to awareness whenever it strays. In the fifth picture, the ox is gradually tamed. At this stage, emotions still arise, but they no longer dominate. Anger may spark, but it does not burn the whole forest. Fear may appear, but it does not paralyze. Through consistent practice, the ox learns to walk with you. Negative states are still present, but they are recognized quickly and guided back into balance. The struggle is less violent, and moments of peace begin to appear more often. The sixth picture shows the ox at rest. Here, the once wild mind has become calm, obedient not through suppression, but through understanding. Emotions still arise, but they are quiet, fleeting, no longer threatening. You can sit in silence without being dragged into storms. You can face insult without losing balance. This stage reveals the fruit of patience. Emotions are not enemies to be destroyed, but forces that, when understood, lose their destructive power. The seventh picture depicts returning home on the ox. Now the mind that once resisted becomes a companion. Emotions that once enslaved you become part of the path itself. Anger transforms into clarity, sorrow into depth, fear into vigilance. The ox carries you instead of resisting you. Negativity is no longer an obstacle but material for growth. The very energy that once harmed now serves. This is the true transformation, not to erase emotion, but to harness its power wisely. The eighth picture shows both ox and self disappearing. At this point, the sense of ego that clung to emotions is released. There is no longer me struggling with my anger. There is only awareness, spacious and free. The ox is not gone because it was defeated. It is gone because the separation between self and emotion has dissolved. Anger may still arise, but it is like a ripple on a vast ocean. It comes, it goes, it leaves no trace. The ninth picture is often depicted as a circle, symbolizing emptiness. Here, you rest in the direct experience of non-self and impermanence. Emotions are seen as empty, lacking permanence or solidity. They arise from causes and conditions. They vanish with causes and conditions. Nothing to cling to, nothing to resist. This is freedom from the cycle of attachment and aversion, the state where emotions no longer bind. The 10th and final picture shows returning to the world, often symbolized by a figure with a wide grin, carrying a sack, walking into the marketplace. This stage represents integration. The freedom found through taming the ox is not meant to remain in isolation. It returns to daily life, to relationships, to work, to community. The one who has walked this path meets the world with ease. Negativity may still appear in others, but it no longer triggers bondage within. Instead, joy, compassion, and humor flow naturally. Emotional liberation is not escape from life, but full engagement with it, without chains. When applied to emotional life, the ox-herding pictures provide a roadmap. They show that taming the mind is not an instant victory, but a gradual training. Each stage matters: searching, noticing, confronting, guiding, resting, transforming, dissolving, and integrating. To see emotions in this way removes the despair that they will never change. Just as the ox can be tamed, so too can anger, fear, and sorrow. This path also teaches humility. No matter how much progress is made, vigilance is needed. The ox may wander again, emotions may rise unexpectedly, but now you know the path. You know the stages. You know how to bring the mind back without panic or self-judgment. This is the real strength, not that negativity never appears, but that it never rules. The ox-herding parables also emphasize that emotional liberation is not about suppression. The ox is not killed, chained forever, or locked away. It becomes a companion, then disappears into spaciousness, then reappears as life itself. This mirrors the reality of emotions. They are not meant to be destroyed, but understood, integrated, and transcended. When this is done, they become sources of wisdom rather than suffering. Through this lens, anger becomes a teacher of boundaries, sorrow becomes a teacher of compassion, fear becomes a teacher of awareness, desire becomes a teacher of impermanence. Each negative state, once tamed, reveals a hidden gift. Emotional liberation does not come from avoidance but from walking alongside the ox until it leads you home. So let these images guide you. Let them remind you that the wildness of the mind is not permanent, that training is possible, that liberation is real. The ox may seem untamable now, but with patience, awareness, and steady practice, it becomes not an enemy, but a path. And when the ox disappears into the vastness of non-self, what remains is a life lived freely, fully, and without the chains of negativity. The path of the ox-herding pictures showed that emotions, once feared as uncontrollable beasts, can be tamed and transformed until they no longer bind you. But training the mind is not only about discipline and awareness, it also involves resonance, the way sound itself shapes the inner landscape. Long before modern science measured frequencies, ancient practitioners discovered that the voice carries power to shift states of mind and energy. In Buddhism, this wisdom took form in the practice of mantra. These sacred sounds are not mere words or cultural symbols. They are vibrations that penetrate the body, the mind, and even the subtle layers of energy where negativity often hides. Negativity is not only a thought or emotion, it settles into the body like tension in the muscles, like heaviness in the chest, like static in the mind. Left unaddressed, it becomes stuck, repeating in cycles. Mantras act like tuning forks. Their vibration shakes loose what has become rigid, dissolving blockages and creating flow. This is why chanting is not about blind repetition. It is about aligning your entire being with a frequency that lifts you beyond ordinary states. When you chant a mantra, the sound enters through the ears, but it also reverberates through the bones, the lungs, the nervous system. The body becomes an instrument. Just as a drum carries rhythm, your chest cavity carries the resonance of sound. Certain syllables, refined through centuries of practice, are designed to open specific channels of energy. The vibration itself is the cleansing. Where negative energy clings like dust, mantra shakes it free. The syllable Om, perhaps the most well-known mantra, illustrates this power. It is said to contain the essence of all sounds. When chanted, its vibration travels from deep in the belly to the crown of the head, harmonizing the entire body. The low resonance clears heaviness from the chest, the middle tones balance the mind, the higher vibrations lift awareness into spaciousness. To chant Om is not just to repeat a word, but to tune your being to the rhythm of the universe. Another example is the mantra Om Mani Padme Hum, central in Tibetan Buddhism. Each syllable is said to purify a different aspect of negativity, pride, jealousy, desire, ignorance, greed, hatred. Chanting this mantra repeatedly is like washing the mind with waves of sound. The repetition does not dull the senses, it sharpens them, bringing clarity where once there was confusion. Negativity weakens because its vibrational pattern cannot survive when replaced by the steady rhythm of mantra. Modern science now confirms what ancient practitioners already knew. Sound alters brainwaves, heart rhythms, and nervous system activity. Chanting mantras slows the breath, lowers blood pressure, and activates the parasympathetic nervous system, the body's natural state of rest and repair. On a psychological level, the mind, often restless and scattered, begins to focus on the rhythm of sound. This focus replaces endless inner chatter with a single vibration. Instead of carrying the weight of 1,000 thoughts, you ride one current of sound into stillness. But the deepest power of mantra is not physical or psychological alone. It is energetic. Every thought, every word carries vibration. Negativity has its own frequency, tight, heavy, discordant. Mantras create harmony. They overlay the discord with resonance until the disharmony dissolves. This is why practitioners speak of mantras as cleansing. They reset the inner vibration, dissolving stuck patterns and restoring flow. There is also the collective power of chanting. When a group chants together, the vibrations multiply, weaving into a field of resonance that is stronger than any one voice. Negativity dissolves faster in such fields, not because of numbers alone, but because collective sound amplifies harmony. Monasteries have preserved this practice for centuries, not for performance but for purification of mind and environment alike. Mantra practice also trains attention. When you chant, the mind may wander, but the rhythm pulls it back. Each syllable is an anchor, preventing the mind from drifting into anger, worry, or regret. Over time, the mantra carves grooves in consciousness. Instead of defaulting to negative thought patterns, the mind returns to the mantra's resonance. Negativity loses ground, not through suppression but through replacement. For those burdened by grief, mantra can feel like a lifeline. The heaviness in the chest vibrates with the sound, loosening as the chant continues. For those consumed by anger, the sharp edges soften as the vibration deepens. For those trapped in anxiety, the rhythm of syllables steadies the breath, calming the nervous system. Each condition responds to the resonance in its own way, but all are touched by it. Mantras also bypass the limits of language. Negative self-talk thrives on words, "I am not enough," "I am broken," "I cannot change." These phrases cut deep. Mantras, though formed of syllables, are not bound to meaning in the ordinary sense. Their power lies in sound itself. This is why, even without understanding Sanskrit or Tibetan, chanting still works. The vibration cleanses where thought cannot reach. Another layer of mantra practice is intention. The vibration itself carries power, but when combined with sincere intention, the effect deepens. To chant with the wish to release negativity, to heal, to open compassion, infuses the sound with direction. Intention shapes energy like a sculptor shapes clay. The mantra is the tool, intention is the hand, and together they form a new inner reality. For emotional healing, mantra can be used in practical ways. When anger rises, chanting a calming mantra steadies the heart. When sadness lingers, chanting a mantra of compassion softens despair. When fear overwhelms, chanting a protective mantra restores courage. Over time, these practices create associations. The mind learns to shift from negativity to clarity each time the mantra begins. Silent repetition of mantra also has power. You may not always chant aloud, but repeating the sound mentally still creates subtle vibrations. The mind becomes filled with the rhythm, leaving no space for toxic chatter. Silent mantra can be carried into daily life, walking, working, resting, turning ordinary moments into opportunities for cleansing. Over long practice, the mantra itself begins to echo without effort. Just as a song lingers in the mind after hearing it, a mantra repeated thousands of times begins to chant itself. This is called japa in Sanskrit, the repetition that ingrains vibration so deeply it becomes second nature. At this stage, negativity has little room to root because the inner field resonates continuously with harmony. Importantly, mantra practice is not about escape. It is not meant to cover pain with sound. It is meant to bring pain into resonance, to shake loose what is stuck and restore balance. This requires sincerity and patience. At first, the chant may feel mechanical, but with time, the body and mind surrender to the vibration and the cleansing begins to feel natural. Mantras also connect practitioners to lineage. Each chant has been spoken for centuries, carried by countless voices. To chant is to join this stream, to align your vibration with a current that has purified minds for generations. This collective energy strengthens individual practice, like stepping into a river that already flows strongly. The liberation that comes from mantra is subtle but profound. Negativity no longer feels solid. It vibrates, shifts, dissolves. The mind becomes less sticky, less prone to clinging. The body feels lighter, the heart feels open. Even the environment around you changes, because the resonance of mantra does not stop at your skin, it radiates outward, influencing the field of those near you. So let mantra be more than sound. Let it be vibration that cleanses, frequency that heals, resonance that liberates. Each chant is a wave moving through you, breaking apart what is stuck, opening space for clarity. With practice, negativity no longer dominates, because its discord cannot survive in the harmony of mantra. The voice becomes the instrument, the body becomes the chamber, and the heart becomes the source of sound that sets you free. The resonance of mantra shows how vibration can loosen negativity, how sound itself can reset the energy of the mind and body. Yet even as the voice carries healing, there is still a deeper root that must be addressed: the way we cling. Negativity often lingers not because of the pain itself, but because of the refusal to release it. Memories are held tight, stories repeated endlessly, wounds reopened again and again. The Buddha offered a direct medicine for this habit: the truth of impermanence, anicca. To see that everything, pain, joy, memory, identity arises and passes, is to loosen the hand that clings. Letting go does not mean erasing the past, but recognizing that nothing can stay fixed. And in this recognition lies freedom. Clinging is the habit of the mind that insists, this must remain, this must not change. It attaches to pleasure, hoping it will last, and it attaches to pain, reliving it endlessly, as if keeping it alive protects against it. Both attachments create suffering, because life moves regardless of desire. To see impermanence clearly is to stop fighting reality. When the truth of change is fully accepted, memories no longer bind. They are acknowledged as waves that once rose and fell, not as chains that must be carried forever. Painful memories are particularly heavy because they feel permanent. A betrayal, a loss, a humiliation, all are replayed as though frozen in time. But impermanence reveals that the memory itself is not solid. Each time it is recalled, it is slightly different. The image shifts, the emotions around it change, the body reacts differently. Memory is a living process, not a fixed object. By seeing this, you loosen the illusion that the past is unchanging. What you cling to is already slipping away. Impermanence also transforms how you see grief. When someone you love is gone, the ache feels endless. Yet the very pain shifts day by day, sometimes sharp, sometimes dull, sometimes absent. Even grief is not permanent. Knowing this does not erase sorrow, but it prevents despair. You see that no feeling is eternal, that time itself carries healing. This realization becomes a refuge. The storm will pass, because all storms pass. The Buddha compared life to a river, always flowing, never the same from moment to moment. To cling to one drop is to miss the movement of the whole. Painful memories are drops already carried downstream, yet the mind insists on holding them still. This resistance creates suffering. Letting go means stepping into the river's truth. Everything moves, everything changes, nothing is fixed. Impermanence also applies to the self. The me who was hurt in the past is not the same as the me sitting here now. Your body has changed, your mind has shifted, your life has moved. To carry resentment against the past is to cling to a version of yourself that no longer exists. When you see that the self is as impermanent as every other phenomenon, the weight of old wounds begins to dissolve. One practical way to work with impermanence is mindfulness of breath. Each inhale arises and passes. Each exhale arises and passes. The breath cannot be clung to. It teaches in every moment that life is movement, not stasis. When painful memories arise, Returning to the breath reminds you that even this thought is impermanent. It comes, it goes, like the rise and fall of breathing. Impermanence also teaches humility. Every victory fades, every loss softens, every identity shifts. To hold too tightly to pride or shame is to misunderstand reality. By releasing both, you find balance. Pride does not last, shame does not last. What remains is the flow itself, steady and unstoppable. Another layer of practice is seeing impermanence in nature. The falling leaf, the shifting clouds, the changing seasons, all are teachers. When you look at a flower, you know it will wither. When you see the sunset, you know it will fade. Yet knowing this does not make the beauty less. It makes it more precious. The same is true for experiences in life. Their impermanence makes them meaningful. Painful memories lose their sting when seen through this lens. They too were moments passing through, not eternal marks. Letting go through impermanence does not mean forgetting. It means holding memories lightly, as part of the flow. You do not deny what happened, but you stop carrying it as if it were fixed forever. You honor the moment and allow it to rest in the river of time. This is true healing, not erasing the past, but freeing yourself from the illusion that it still binds you. Impermanence also dissolves fear of the future. Just as painful memories change, so too will future pains. Anticipated suffering rarely arrives as expected, and when it does,